My good husband's white moonlight got promoted. He ordered me, prepare a table of fine dishes to celebrate for her. At the dinner table, my daughter pushed away the shrimp I peeled for her, gazing at the white moonlight with eyes full of stars. Aunt Selena, it would be great if you were my mom. I took off my apron. Calmly nodding, good idea, I'll give this position to her. That night, I left the divorce agreement and vanished without a trace. Later, my ex-husband saw my exclusive interview in a financial magazine. He called frantically, Vivian, come back, the children know they were wrong. I chuckled lightly, what does that have to do with me? Now, I am someone else's wife. At the dinner table, my daughter pushed away the shrimp I peeled for her, gazing at the white moonlight with eyes full of stars. Aunt Selena, would you be my mom? Marcus's lips curled into a smirk. He laughed. Selena immediately waved her hand, but her eyes glanced toward me. Sister Vivian, the child is talking nonsense, please don't get angry. I said nothing. Lowered my head. Untied the apron. Slowly folded it. Laid it flat. My actions were eerily calm. Good idea. I raised my eyes, looking at them. This position, I'll give it up. Marcus furrowed his brows. Vivian, what are you fussing about? What day is it today? Don't spoil the mood. Selena stood up abruptly. Her face was so innocent it seemed about to shed tears. Sister Vivian, it's all my fault. She reached out to pull me. The child's words were unintentional, please don't take it to heart. Marcus quickly apologized to Sister Vivian. Her words appeared to defend me sentence by sentence. Yet every word pinned me with the accusation of being unreasonable and petty with a child. My son finished his last bite of rice and muttered softly, it's your fault anyway. Aunt Selena is much better than you. Look. This is my 10-year marriage. 10 years of hard work and dedication. In exchange, this is the outcome. I ignored Selena's outstretched hand. Just looked at Marcus. Marcus, are you sure? Sure about what? He looked impatient. I asked you to celebrate for Selena, but you're putting on a deadpan face for whom? Selena is a meritorious contributor to our company and my capable assistant. As my wife, you don't even have this much magnanimity? Fine. I nodded. Uttered one word. Then, I turned and walked into the bedroom. From behind came Selena's soft and weak voice, Marcus, did I really make Sister Vivian unhappy? Maybe I should leave first, your family. Don't mind her. Marcus's voice rose by an octave. She's just spoiled by me, becoming more and more unpresentable. Sit down, today is to celebrate for you, no one can ruin it. Listening to the laughter and joy outside, I pulled out the dusty suitcase from under the bed. In the suitcase's interlayer lay quietly an old phone that had never connected to the Zhou family's Wi-Fi. And a USB key from a Swiss bank. For 10 years, I played the role of a qualified good-for-nothing, but never truly handed over my trump cards. 10 minutes later, I came out pulling the suitcase. The 4 people in the living room were enjoying themselves harmoniously, as if I were the superfluous intruder. Marcus saw my suitcase, and his face completely darkened. Vivian, have you had enough fun? Put the suitcase back and come apologize to Selena. His command was taken for granted, carrying the arrogance of a superior. Selena also stood up, her eyes red and pitiful. Sister Vivian, please, don't leave. If you leave, Marcus will blame me. How can I face staying in the company afterward? It's all my fault, should I kneel to you? As she spoke, her knees really bent down. Marcus immediately rushed over in one stride to support her. Turning back, he roared at me, are you crazy? Look what you've forced Selena into. Where has she ever wronged you that you humiliate her like this? My daughter Yara also rushed over, blocking in front of Selena, spreading her arms and screaming at me, don't bully Aunt Selena. You bad woman. I hate you. Looking at this absurd scene before me, I laughed. I took out the long-prepared divorce agreement from my bag and placed it on the cabinet in the entrance. Sign it. He sneered, divorce? Vivian, how will you live without me? 10 years without a job, going to wash dishes? Still thinking you're a young girl with someone to coax you? Selena added tearfully, Sister Vivian, don't be impulsive. I know you've worked hard, but you can't degrade yourself like this. If you divorce, what about the children? They can't be without a mother. They already don't have a mother. I calmly stated a fact. From today, your new mother is Selena. I pulled the suitcase and opened the door. Marcus roared behind me, Vivian. Once you step out this door, don't ever come back. I'll wait for you to come crying and begging me. I didn't look back. Before the door closed, I clearly uttered 2 words, wait. Then, I gently closed the door. The elevator door opened, looking at the woman in the mirror with a sallow face and weary eyes. I suddenly felt immensely relieved. That night, I cancelled my phone number and vanished without a trace. I didn't go to any place they could think of. I just went to one. A place Marcus would never imagine I would return to. Marcus was convinced I couldn't last 3 days. In his eyes, I was a complete good-for-nothing. A housewife detached from society for 10 years, who couldn't even handle a smartphone, useless except for cooking and cleaning. He was too lazy to look for me. Just waiting for me to spend all that pitiful pocket money, then slink back shamefully, kneel before him and admit my mistake. The first day. He didn't receive my call. He told Selena, don't mind her. Starve for 2 days, and she'll behave herself. Selena understandingly leaned into his arms. It's all my fault. Marcus, maybe you should go find her and bring her back? I don't mind. Of course you matter. Marcus held her tightly. You are the most important person. You've been wronged. The second day. Still no news from me. The children started throwing tantrums. Yara's princess dress couldn't be found. Ethan's Ultraman model was accidentally broken by Selena while cleaning. The house was in utter chaos. The takeout Selena ordered was expensive and unpalatable, the 2 children spat it out after 1 bite. Marcus began to get irritable. He yelled at the children, is this how your mom usually spoils you? Crying and fussing over trivial matters. Yara cried out, I don't want you to manage me. I want mom. I want mom. The daughter who the day before was shouting Aunt Selena, it would be great if you were my mom, finally remembered her real mother's goodness. Unfortunately, it was too late. Marcus called me for the first time, but it prompted that it couldn't connect. He was stunned. He didn't expect that I would cancel my phone number. In his view, this was an extremely foolish and childish act. What is she trying to do? Completely lose contact? Does she think this will make me compromise? He sneered into the air. Selena massaged his temples and said softly, Sister Vivian might have been impulsive. She has no money on her, she can't go far. Marcus, the company recently has a training program in Singapore, the director recommended me. Go. Marcus agreed without thinking. I can handle things at home. Your resume is important. He began to recall the bits and pieces of our time together. We were university classmates. I was once the most dazzling pearl in the department, with countless suitors. But I fell for Marcus, who came from a poor background but was brimming with talent. After graduation, I gave up guaranteed postgraduate recommendation and offers from prestigious foreign universities to start a business with him. During the company's most difficult times, I used the inheritance left by my father to fill the funding gap. I accompanied him on business trips, drinking until I had gastric bleeding. When the company stabilized, I got pregnant. He said, Vivian, you've worked too hard. Now that the company is stable, go home and rest well, give me a chubby son, and I'll support you from now on. I believed him. I returned to the family and became the unsung woman behind him. However, in his distorted memory, this history was quietly altered. What he remembered was how he overcame all objections and led the company out of. What he remembered was that I voluntarily gave up my career and chose a comfortable family life. He even thought that I couldn't leave him, that I coveted comfort, which is why I gave up self-growth. As for that startup capital, he preferred to describe it as our joint marital property, never mentioning that it was my personal property before marriage. The third day. Selena flew to Singapore. Marcus was completely overwhelmed. He couldn't cook, couldn't use the washing machine, couldn't find the children's homework due the next day. The house looked like it had been ransacked. He finally set aside his pitiful pride and started sending people to find me. He checked all my bank cards and found the balances were zero. He sneered. As expected, penniless, let's see how long she can hold out. He didn't know that what I took away was never the things he could check. The fourth day. Marcus received a call from his lawyer. Mr. Marcus, your offshore trust account at UBS has been liquidated. According to the agreement, Ms. Vivian, as the sole authorized executor, has the right to independently dispose of the account upon confirming your marital infidelity. Marcus felt a booming in his brain, a blank. That account was the core of all his assets. It was his hidden private money for many years. It was his last fortress to avoid risks. He roared into the phone, "What specific conditions? On what basis does she liquidate my account?" The lawyer's voice was calm and formulaic. Agreement Clause 3.1.4, if you are unfaithful in marriage, and confirmed by a third-party notary institution, Ms. Vivian gains independent disposal rights. We received the notarization of intimate photos of you and Ms. Selena issued by the Swiss Fairmont Notary. Marcus hung up the phone, his body ice-cold. He remembered. That authorization document full of English was signed when I was 7 months pregnant, coaxed by him. At the time, he said, "Wife, this is an education fund prepared for our children, in your name, to put you at ease." He never imagined that I had buried such a mine in it. Even less did he imagine who took those photos. Marcus rushed into the study like mad. He roughly tore open the deepest folder in the safe, trembling as he pulled out that English authorization agreement. Back then, he specifically found the top lawyers to design the clauses, ensuring he had absolute control, while I was just a symbolic name. He thought it was seamless. Now it seemed that this setup, from the moment I signed, had become a trap tailored for me. "Vivian. You're so ruthless." He punched the table, his hand back instantly swelling red. He immediately called Selena. As soon as the call connected, he bombarded her with questions. "The photos from our Bali vacation, who did you give them to?" Selena on the other end was confused by the question. Her voice carried the grogginess and grievance of just waking up. "Marcus, what are you talking about? What photos? I just got off the plane, I'm exhausted." "Did Sister Vivian say something to you again?" "Don't mention her to me." Marcus irritably interrupted her. "I'm asking about the photos. All the photos of us together, is it possible they leaked out?" "How could that be?" Selena's tone sounded incredibly sincere. "Those photos are all in my phone, I treasure them so much, I wouldn't show them to anyone." "Marcus, what exactly happened? Don't scare me." Marcus hung up. He knew the problem wasn't with Selena. This woman, besides acting coquettish and disguising, had an empty mind. So, who was it? Who had the ability to get those photos and send them to the Swiss notary without anyone knowing? Countless names flashed through his mind, all rejected one by one. He slumped in the chair. An unprecedented fear gripped him. He realized. He seemed to have never truly understood the woman who shared his bed for 10 years. He thought she was a caged canary. Plucked of feathers, claws dulled, only able to depend on him to live. But now, this canary had turned into a falcon, clawing out his heart in one strike. Marcus began frantically searching for me. On the company side, due to the broken capital chain, several projects were forced to halt, and the stock price plummeted. In the midst of being overwhelmed, he thought of one person. My best friend, Chloe. A woman thriving in the legal world, and the only one who opposed me marrying him from beginning to end. He dialed Chloe's number, his tone unprecedentedly polite. Chloe, this is Marcus. Do you know where Vivian is? She ran away from home, I'm very worried about her. On the other end, Chloe let out a short sneer. Marcus, now you know to worry? Back when you made Vivian wait outside the delivery room for your signature, but you accompanied your mistress to the hospital for a cold, why didn't you worry she might die on the operating table? Marcus's heart skipped a beat. He thought he had done this seamlessly, Vivian had never mentioned it. Also, when you took her premarital property to buy a house and car for your precious sister, why didn't you worry she would feel heartbroken? When you cursed her in front of all relatives as a useless woman who couldn't bear a son, forcing her to get ovulation injections, why didn't you worry her body would break down? With each sentence Chloe said, Marcus's face paled a bit more. These old matters he thought had been buried by time were dug up one by one. Like countless resounding slaps, fiercely striking his face. Marcus, don't you want to know where she is? Chloe's voice suddenly turned ice cold. I'll tell you, she's in a place you'll never reach, living a good life you can't imagine. Instead of having time to find her, better think about how to explain to your shareholders why the company's reserve funds vanished without a trace. Chloe hung up. Marcus stood there dazed. Reserve funds? He suddenly remembered, the company had a reserve fund that I had always managed. That money. He rushed out the door, drove to the company, running countless red lights along the way. Now he had only one thought. Vivian, exactly how much of my money did you take? When Marcus rushed into the company's finance room, his whole body was shaking. No, trembling. The finance director saw him and timidly handed over a report. Marcus, Ms. Vivian, a week ago, in your name, activated the Emergency Risk Reserve Fund plan. Transferred all liquid funds on the account to an overseas investment company named CS. CS? Marcus felt extremely unfamiliar with this name. Yes, this company was newly registered last month in the Cayman Islands, with Ms. Vivian as the legal representative. Marcus's vision blackened, almost unable to stand. That money was the company's lifeline. The last line of defense for sudden crises. Vivian not only emptied his private treasury but also pulled the rug out, directly draining the company's blood. On what basis? I'm the legal representative. Without my signature, on what basis can she move that money? He roared hysterically. The finance director stammered an explanation. Because 3 years ago you signed a full power of attorney agreement, granting Ms. Vivian some of your financial decision-making rights in the company. The agreement states that when the company faces potential systemic crisis caused by moral risks from senior management, she has the right to independently dispose of this reserve fund. Moral risk? Marcus chewed on these words, a chill rushing from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. Again, moral risk. Identical to the clause in that offshore trust. He remembered. 3 years ago, when Selena just joined the company. To avoid suspicion and to better take care of Selena on the accounts, he indeed let Vivian hold some authority on his behalf. At the time, he thought Vivian knew nothing about finance, just a rubber stamp for signing. How could he be so stupid? He personally handed the knife to her. And taught her where to aim the blade. Call the police. Call the police immediately. Sue her for embezzlement. Commercial fraud. Marcus's eyes were bloodshot. It's useless, Marcus. The company's legal counsel looked ashen. We've studied it, all of Ms. Vivian's operations are within the legal framework, that agreement is impeccable. Marcus completely collapsed. His life, in just a few days, fell from the clouds into the mud. He lost all his money, the company was on the brink of bankruptcy. Everything he was proud of became a joke. And the instigator, the woman he looked down on and thought he could manipulate at will, vanished without a trace. Just when he was in utter despair, a private detective called. Mr. Marcus, found a clue about your wife. Marcus grasped it like the last lifeline. Where is she? Someone saw her in the Blue Bay Villa district in the west of the city. It said, she's working as a nanny for a household. Nanny? Marcus was stunned. Immediately, an indescribable ecstasy and twisted pleasure surged in his heart. So that's it. She took all his money but had no way to spend it, only able to hide and work as a nanny. She's still that useless good-for-nothing. As long as he finds her and gets the money back, he can make a comeback. He regained his former spirited demeanor, even tidying his disheveled hair in the mirror. He wanted to appear before her as a victor. He wanted to show her that without him, she was a worthless servant. He drove the car, speeding all the way to Blue Bay Villa District. This was the city's top affluent area, with extremely strict security. He was stopped at the gate. He waited anxiously, like a hunter awaiting prey. Finally, a black Bentley Mulsanne slowly drove out. The rear window lowered, revealing a face he thought of day and night. Vivian. She wore a well-tailored Chanel suit, with exquisite makeup. No longer a sallow-faced housewife. Her whole body exuded a calm and powerful aura. A handsome and elegant man was turning his head to say something to her, his eyes full of appreciation and tenderness. That man was Adrian, the rising investment star in the financial world today. Marcus's brain went blank. Nanny? This is what they called a nanny? He rushed over like mad, banging on the car window and hoarsely roaring, "Vivian!" The car stopped. She turned her head, her gaze calm, like looking at a speck of dust. Adrian asked softly, "Vivian, do you know him?" Marcus stared at her intently, waiting for her to panic. But, no. Vivian's red lips parted slightly, uttering a few words. "Don't know him. Probably a beggar." My voice was light, yet like a needle, piercing Marcus's last layer of self-respect. The Bentley glided away silently, leaving him alone rigid on the spot. Like a clown abandoned by the whole world. Inside the car, Adrian looked at the rearview mirror, really not going down to chat more? He looks quite pitiful. Pitiful? I withdrew my gaze, arranging the shawl on my shoulder. Adrian, snakes look pitiful when frozen stiff. Adrian laughed. All right, as you say. But your move of pulling the firewood from under the cauldron plus golden cicada shedding its shell was played beautifully. I guess he now wants to die. Die? I looked at the rapidly receding street scene outside the window, my voice calm. That would be too easy on him. This month, I hardly closed my eyes. From a housewife isolated from the world for 10 years, transforming back into that Vivian who made decisive killings in the business world. This process was like scraping poison from the bone. On the first day I left the Zhou family, I contacted Adrian. He was my university senior. After I chose Marcus back then, he was the only one who said to me, "If he bullies you, come find me anytime." In these 10 years, we had almost no contact. But when I dialed that number etched in my heart, he said only one word, "Wait for me." Half an hour later, he appeared before me, travel-worn. I laid out my plan completely. Including those angel investments I made overseas with pocket money hidden from Marcus, and all the escape routes I paved for myself. After listening, the shock in Adrian's eyes slowly turned into pure admiration. "Vivian, you're a genius. Marcus possessed a treasure like you yet didn't realize it, he's simply the stupidest man in the world." "No, he's not stupid." I looked at him and corrected. "It's arrogance. In his world, women are just appendages, reproductive tools, nannies. He never thought that a nanny could have her own thoughts." Adrian mobilized all his connections, helped me integrate all resources, and established CS Investment Company. The money I took from Marcus was not a penny more or less. It was all the startup capital I invested in his company back then, plus the investment returns calculated according to the highest industry standards over these 10 years. What I took back was just what originally belonged to me. I worked day and night, familiarizing myself with the ever-changing financial market, studying mountains of business reports. The physical fatigue was far less than the mental torment. I often woke up in the middle of the night, thinking of Yara and Ethan. Remembering them snuggling in my arms as children, calling Mom in their milky voices. My heart would ache until I couldn't breathe. But I knew I couldn't turn back. Every moment of softening was cruelty to myself. Every waver, and the faces of Marcus and Selena would clearly emerge before my eyes. Yara's words, "Aunt Selena, it would be great if you were my mom," like a thorn that could never be pulled out, stabbing my heart. I must win. Not for anyone, only for myself. I want all those who look down on me to see that I, Vivian, am not someone's wife, not someone's mother, I am me. I left Marcus not because I had no way out, but to pursue my own splendid future. Soon, new news came from Marcus's side. His company's stock price plummeted, several major shareholders united to force him out, demanding he take responsibility for the fund deficit. He was overwhelmed, seeking loans everywhere but hitting walls. When the wall falls, everyone pushes. The business world is that realistic. How glorious he was in the past, how destitute he is now. And I, as the founder of CS Capital, high-profilely accepted an exclusive interview from a top domestic financial magazine. I deliberately chose a media that Marcus would never think of. The interview title, drafted by Adrian, dormant for 10 years, astonishing the world, unveiling the legendary life of the 100 billion female trader Vivian. I knew Marcus would see it. I wanted him to see with his own eyes what he had discarded. On the day the interview was released, my new phone was bombarded with calls. Countless unfamiliar numbers sent various messages. Shocked, flattering, networking. I ignored them all. Until a video call came in. It was my daughter, Yara. I hesitated and answered. In the video, Yara's face had thinned, her eyes swollen red. Seeing me, she burst into tears instantly. "Mom. Why don't you want me? Where did you go? I miss you so much." My heart suddenly tightened. Yara cried breathlessly, "Dad's company is going down. He drinks every day. Aunt Selena ran away. The home is in total chaos. Mom, come back please? I'll never say those words again. I only want you as my mom." I looked at the screen without speaking. The lens suddenly shook. Marcus's face squeezed in, full of bloodshot eyes. He hoarsely roared, "Vivian. Are you satisfied? The home is destroyed. Are you happy?" Looking at him, I suddenly laughed. "Marcus, you're mistaken. I didn't destroy the home. It was you who personally gave it away." My words were like a knife, precisely piercing Marcus's most vulnerable nerve. He was stunned on the spot, the anger on his face instantly solidifying, replaced by immense panic and bewilderment. What did you say?" I said. I enunciated each word, my voice clear and cold. "When you, for another woman, tacitly allowed the children to humiliate me, this home was already broken. I just cleaned up the ruins." On the other end of the video, Yara's cries grew louder. I could see Marcus's hand shaking. He wanted to refute but couldn't find any words. Because what I said was the truth. "Vivian. What more do you want? You took the money. You destroyed the company. Isn't that enough?" He was furious, but only impotent rage remained. "What do I want?" I countered. "Marcus, the Tianshu project is about to expire, right?" The Tianshu project was his ambitious work to challenge the industry leader position. For this, he signed a devilish gambling agreement. If the project failed, he not only had to compensate 3 times the investment but also lose control of the company. His face turned pale. "None of your business." "Oh? Is that so?" I chuckled lightly. "Coincidentally. The Yaoguang project that crushed Tianshu, the boss is me." Marcus was struck as if by lightning. The Yaoguang project had recently risen to fame in the industry, hailed as the dark horse most likely to change the industry landscape. He never dreamed that behind this dark horse was me. You. He pointed at me on the screen, lips trembling. "Those technical plans were yours." "Yes." I admitted frankly. "Those plans, I placed them on your desk 3 years ago. Unfortunately, you were busy celebrating Miss Selena's birthday, didn't even glance, just said a woman's wild thoughts, not presentable. I clearly remember that day I went to him with a thick stack of materials, wanting to share my ideas. But he impatiently pushed them away, telling me to hurry and book the restaurant because Selena liked that hard-to-reserve French restaurant in the south of the city. The disappointment and coldness of that moment are still etched in my bones. Now, I turned his discarded wild thoughts into the sharpest sword piercing his heart. Impossible, this can't be. Marcus muttered to himself, completely falling into self-doubt. His long proud business acumen and professional judgment were shattered in the face of cruel reality. He finally realized that what he missed was not a plan, but a person who could create an entire empire for him. I didn't want to waste more words with him and prepared to hang up the video. "Mom. Don't hang up." Yara's shrill cry came through. "Mom, I was wrong. Come back. I'll listen to everything you say. I'll help you scold Dad. Hit the bad aunt. Please." The child's words were like a knife. She thought this was just an ordinary quarrel, that as long as she sided right, she could get her mother back. She didn't understand that some things, once broken, could never be pieced back together. My heart softened for a moment, but reason quickly took over. "Yara, when you do something wrong, you must bear the consequences. That's what I taught you, isn't it?" After saying that, I hung up the call and blacklisted the number. The office fell into dead silence. Adrian, unbeknownst when, stood at the door, handing me a cup of warm water. "Are you okay?" I took the water and shook my head. "Fine. He's doomed to lose." Adrian said, "The core algorithm of Yaoguang leads them by at least 2 generations. He has no chance of turning the tables. What I want is not just his loss." I looked at the bustling traffic outside the window, my voice light. I want him to have nothing. In the following days, Marcus went completely mad. He tried every way to contact me, apologies, repentances, curses, threats, various messages surged through different channels, all intercepted one by my assistant. All in vain. Just the day before the final review of the Tianshu project, Selena suddenly returned and blocked me downstairs at my company. She pretended to touch her belly, showed the report, smugly, "I'm pregnant with Marcus's son. The Zhou family's heir. You can't beat me." Selena's face had a triumphant smile. I almost laughed out loud. At this point, she still thought a so-called son could be her trump card to turn the tables. Her cognition was still stuck in feudal dynasty palace intrigue dramas. So what? I looked at her with interest. "What do you want to say? Ask me to spare you for the child's sake, let go, and return Marcus to you? I'm not begging you." Selena raised her voice, as if this could give her more confidence. "I'm here to notify you. Vivian, you'd better stop now, divorce Marcus, return what he deserves. Otherwise, don't blame me for mutual destruction." "Mutual destruction?" I repeated the 4 words, finding it somewhat amusing. "Miss Selena, you might have some misunderstanding about your position. The current situation is a game between a shark and a shrimp. What does a little shrimp like you have to talk about mutual destruction with a shark?" My contempt completely enraged her. "Don't be smug." She screamed incoherently. "What do you think you are? A sallow-faced housewife abandoned by a man. Even if you have some stinking money now, so what? You can't tie down a man's heart. Marcus loves me. When he's with me, he's the most relaxed and happy. With you, he only feels suppressed and irritable." The lobby was bustling, many people attracted by the quarrel here, casting curious glances. Selena seemed to enjoy this attention from all sides, speaking even more vigorously. "Do you know? Every time after marital relations with you, he has to shower immediately. He says he finds you dirty. He says your body is like a stagnant pool, making him nauseous." These words were extremely vicious. If it were a month ago, I would have collapsed on the spot. But now, I just found her noisy. I took out my phone from the bag, pressed record. Go on, keep cursing. She chattered on, her words venomous. After she finished cursing, I softly countered, Marcus has zero sperm vitality, how did you get pregnant? Harder than winning the lottery, right? Did he tell you about this? The color on Selena's face faded visibly. You're talking nonsense. You're slandering. She screamed, but her voice carried obvious panic. Whether I'm talking nonsense, wait until the child is born and do a paternity test to know. I put away the phone, stepped closer to her, lowered my voice. However, I guess you won't wait until then. Miss Selena, do you know how many years slander and commercial espionage add up to? Selena's body began to shake. I don't know what you're talking about. No problem, my lawyer will let you know. I smiled at her. Also, the data you stole to Singapore was fake. Thank you for helping me crush the competitor. Selena was completely dumbfounded. She looked at me, her eyes full of fear and disbelief. She always thought she was the smart one controlling the overall situation, but never expected that from beginning to end, she was just a pawn on my chessboard. A pawn to be discarded after use. You. She pointed at me, unable to say a word, then her eyes rolled back, and she fell straight backward. I stepped aside, letting her fall on the cold, hard marble floor. Surrounding gasps arose. I didn't look back and walked straight out of the building. Getting in the car, I sent that recording along with the photo of Selena's pregnancy report to one person. Marcus's mother. That mean old lady who despised me from the first day I entered the door, always saying my belly was useless, praising Selena as the model future daughter-in-law. I sent a text, Mom, congratulations, you're about to hold a grandson. However, I suggest before preparing his full moon banquet, confirm if he really is Marcus's. After doing all this, I started the car. Tomorrow is the doomsday for the Tianshu project. Also Marcus's judgment day. The final review meeting for the Tianshu project became a complete farce. The final plan prepared by Marcus was pointed out on the spot by the judges for fatal logical flaws and data fabrication. And that fabricated data was exactly what Selena leaked to the competitor, who then exposed it prematurely in an international journal as evidence. Marcus was speechless in defense. The investors announced on the spot to activate the gambling agreement, not only withdrawing all investments but also requiring Marcus to compensate 3 times the breach penalty. His company's controlling rights changed hands overnight. He went from a glamorous listed company boss to a pauper burdened with huge debts. When the bankruptcy liquidation news came out, I was in my new office, looking at the river view outside the window. Adrian walked in, placed a document on my desk. He's done, he said. The company was acquired by us, debts borne by us. All assets under his personal name, including that house, will be forcibly auctioned by the court. I nodded, expected outcome. What about his mother? I asked. Adrian's expression became somewhat strange. His mother, after receiving your message, immediately rushed over and fought with Selena in the hospital. It said Selena miscarried. Later check showed the child wasn't Marcus's at all. Then what? Then the old lady was so angry she had a stroke, now hemiplegic in the hospital. Marcus sold his last bit of jewelry, barely paying medical fees, already overwhelmed. I was silent, without a word of comment. Pitiful people must have hateful aspects. All this was their own doing. At this moment, my private phone rang. A familiar number jumped on the screen. I answered. On the other end was Marcus's hoarse, broken, despair-filled voice. Vivian, come back, the children know they were wrong. His voice carried a sobbing tone, humble like a dog. Yara and Ethan, they think of you every day. Yara's grades have plummeted, fighting in school every day. They can't be without you. This home can't be without you. He was still using the children and home to blackmail me. Truly pathetic and ridiculous. I chuckled lightly, my voice clearly transmitting through the waves to his ear. What does that have to do with me? On the other end, dead silence. I could imagine his stunned, incredulous expression at this moment. Leisurely, I uttered the line I had prepared for him for a long time. Now, I am someone else's wife. No. Impossible. He finally exploded, hysterically roaring. You're lying to me. Vivian, you bitch. Are you with Chloe? I should have killed him back then. Think whatever you want. My voice remained calm. Marcus, the game is over. From the day you made me prepare the celebration banquet for Selena, we were over. I hung up the call and dragged him into the blacklist. The world finally became quiet. A few days later, the financial magazine's cover feature interview was officially published. I, Vivian, as the founder of CS Capital, appeared formally in the public eye for the first time. In the magazine, I wore a sharp white suit, with sharp eyes and full aura. The report detailed how I used 10 years, under the cover of a housewife identity, to complete primitive capital accumulation and business layout, and how in just a few months, I overturned the industry structure in one fell swoop. I became a legend. A queen who crawled out of the grave of marriage and was reborn from the fire. When Marcus saw that magazine, it said he was queuing at the hospital's payment window. He stared at my photo on the cover for a long, long time. Then, like mad, he rushed out of the hospital. He found my company. This time, he wasn't stopped downstairs. I told security to let him up. I wanted to see him, see the final appearance of this man I personally destroyed. He rushed into my office, his whole person emaciated, eyes full of bloodshot, clothes dirty and wrinkled, emanating a sour stench. He and I, one in the clouds, one in the mud. Vivian. He looked at me, voice trembling, eyes full of regret, pain, and unwillingness. Why did you do this to me? He asked the stupidest question. I stood up and walked to him. Marcus, in 10 years of marriage, all the gifts you gave me added up to less than 10,000 yuan. But the first bag you bought for Selena was a 200,000 yuan Hermes. When I had difficult labor with Yara and massive bleeding, you waited impatiently outside the operating room, received Selena's call saying she had a fever, and you left immediately. Leaving me alone, struggling on the line between life and death. When my dad passed away, I wanted to go home for the funeral. You said Ethan was young and couldn't be without someone, told me not to fuss. Then, you took Selena and Yara to the Maldives for a half-month vacation. With each thing I said, his face paled more. These details he had long forgotten were, for me, lingering executions etched in my bones. So, ask me why? I laughed. Looking at him, enunciating each word, you deserve to die. These 3 words, I uttered extremely lightly. Like a feather, floating down lightly. Yet it smashed Marcus entirely to pieces. He staggered back 2 steps, hitting the bookshelf behind, making a muffled sound. He opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but couldn't utter a word. Yes, what could he say? Everything I said was fact. All causes he planted himself. Now, he was just tasting the fruit he brewed. Vivian. I was wrong. I really was wrong. He finally found his voice, tears and snot smeared on his face, the whole person like a dog with its tendons and bones extracted. Let's remarry, go back to the past. I'll give you my life. He lunged over, trying to grab my hand, but I dodged in disgust. Go back to the past? Looking at his pitiful and despicable appearance, I only felt nauseous. Marcus, have you forgotten, you now have nothing? What do you have to give me? Your ass full of debts, or your half-dead mom lying in the hospital? Vicious? Compared to what he and his mom did to me, not even 1 in 10,000. His face turned from white to green, from green to purple. How can you say that about my mom? Why can't I? I sneered. When she forced me to get ovulation injections, saying I was useless for not bearing a son, where were you? When she pointed at my nose, cursing my parents for giving birth to a hen that doesn't lay eggs, where were you? Now, with your appearance abandoned by the whole world, you come to lecture me on filial piety? Don't you think you look like a joke? Marcus was rendered speechless by me. He only now discovered that in verbal disputes, he was never my opponent. In the past, I just yielded to him. The children. He played his last card, also the one he thought most effective. For the children's sake, they are innocent. Innocent? I laughed. When Yara pointed at my nose, telling me to get out, letting her future Selena mom move in, she wasn't innocent at all. When Ethan said my cooking wasn't as good as takeout, that Aunt Selena was 10,000 times better than me, he wasn't innocent either. They are your children. Flesh fallen from your body. He roared. So, I didn't let them beg for food. I sat back in my boss chair, looking down at him. I hired the best nanny for them, paid for the most expensive private school tuition for the next 10 years, and set up a trust fund for them. As long as they don't cause trouble every day, this money is enough for them to live worry-free until adulthood. I have fulfilled all a mother's responsibilities in law and morality. As for love and companionship? Sorry, that's too luxurious. It was they themselves who personally discarded it. Marcus was completely desperate. That sour stench, mixed with the breath of despair, polluted the white tea and ginger flower fragrance in my office. I pressed the intercom. Security, please escort this gentleman out. In the future, don't let him step into this building again. He no longer struggled, just looked at me with a dead gaze. At the moment before being dragged out of the office, he suddenly spoke, voice so light it was almost inaudible. That stone, do you still have it? My heart felt like it was gently bumped by something. That stone was picked up at the beach during our first and only family trip. A very ordinary pebble. Yara and Ethan drew crooked suns and smiling faces on it. The day I left it on the entrance cabinet. I didn't answer him. Security dragged him out, the office door slowly closed. The world returned to quiet again. I pulled open the bottom drawer of the desk. In the corner of the drawer lay a small stone quietly. Not the one I left. It was the one Ethan secretly gave me later. On it was drawn a moon, under the moon a small crying stick figure, beside it 2 words, Mom. I picked up the stone, held it in my palm. Hard. Heavy. Just like my heart at this moment. Adrian walked in unbeknownst, holding 2 tickets. Vienna Philharmonic concert tonight, want to go? I looked at him, the gentleness and expectation in his eyes something I never saw in Marcus's. I put the stone back in the drawer and closed it. Then, I stood up and walked toward him. Sure. I said. A year later, my company headquarters relocated, holding a grand celebration party by the Huangpu River. I wore a red long dress, as the host, shuttling among the guests. Adrian stayed by my side as my male companion. Halfway through the party, I went to the terrace to get some air. The evening breeze blew, the river surface reflecting the brilliant lights on both shores, breathtakingly beautiful. Adrian draped a coat over me from behind. What are you thinking? He asked. Thinking that a year ago today, I was still in that small kitchen, sweating profusely for a celebration banquet that didn't belong to me. I sighed. It's all in the past. He held my hand. From now on, in every celebration banquet of yours, the protagonist will only be yourself. His hand was warm, palm dry, and strong. I held back. At this moment, out of the corner of my eye, I glimpsed a familiar yet strange figure. An incongruous, humble shadow. In a corner not far from the party entrance, Marcus stood there. He wore a washed-out cheap suit, hair combed meticulously, but his figure still thin. He had no qualification to enter. He stood far away. Across the sea of people. Looking at me. In his eyes, regret. Envy. A dead heart that didn't even dare to be jealous. Or perhaps not. I showed no indication. No nod, no dodge, not even a ripple of emotion. Like looking at a complete stranger. No. A stranger could still catch the eye. But he was just an insignificant stain on the background board. I turned around, completely throwing that direction behind me. I linked arms with Adrian, smiling brilliantly. The smile brighter than the myriad lights behind. Let's go, our party is just beginning. Adrian looked at me, the light in his eyes astonishingly bright. Good. We turned, walking side by side into that brilliantly lit world belonging to me. I knew. From this moment, my life truly began.